But let's talk about, as far as the Indian-flagged crude oil tanker is concerned, Desh Garima. It has now become the 10th vessel to cross the Strait of Hormuz since the US-Iran conflict began, and the second since the ceasefire. Now, departing from Ras Laffan in Qatar, it seems to have navigated in the tense waterway and has entered the Gulf of Oman without any incident this time. And the vessel is scheduled to dock in Mumbai this evening by latest. As far as Desh Garima is now concerned, it seems to be the 10th Indian flagged, and this vessel is now carrying crude oil, and from Qatar. It is now been said that it is now bound for India, and it is departed from a port in Qatar, and it has been navigating because previously at the accounts of Indian vessels that have come under fire when they were crossing the Strait of Hormuz, and India strongly has also raised this issue with its Iranian counterparts. But it seems that despite a double blockade being enforced, one that of Iranian Strait of Hormuz, and then when it comes to the US blockade, the naval blockade in place, it seems that this one tanker has in a way successfully managed to navigate the tense waterway and entered the Gulf of Oman without any incident. And as far as its arrival on Indian shores is concerned, it is expected to dock at a Mumbai port latest by this evening. So this is the 10th vessel, what we are looking at. Still, the number is significantly low, even far below when it comes to pre-war, when the passageway used to be free. Despite the tensions there, we're looking at a very little movement, because there still seems to be significant amount of vessels that are still stranded in the Persian Gulf. So let's connect with Arunil on this. Arunil, somewhere a relief. We are looking at another tanker that has been dispatched for India.
Well, that is right. Desh Garima is the name of the tanker. It is scheduled to basically reach Mumbai port in the evening today around 5 p.m. This is what we understand. What is significant to note in this is, this is the second Indian tanker to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, the crucial Strait of Hormuz, after the ceasefire was called between Iran and the United States. What has been noticed is, despite the ceasefire as well, there were several other vessels that were being targeted in the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, when Desh Garima, this oil tanker, was also passing through, there were two other Indian vessels that were fired upon or attacked upon by the Iranian Navy. That is when the ambassador of Iran was summoned or called in by the Foreign Secretary in India, explaining the situation, explaining that when permissions have been granted for the vessels during the ceasefire to pass through the crucial and extremely vital Strait of Hormuz, then why the vessels have been attacked? This is detrimental for the maritime industry as well. Around more than 30 soldiers are present on this vessel, that is Desh Garima. 31 crew members are present on this oil tanker, as well as more than 97,000 of crude oil is being transported on this vessel. So yes, heartening signs for India, as this vessel basically will be docking in Mumbai port at around 5 p.m. today.
All right, keep us updated on the developments and the movement of the tanker. Thank you very much, Arunil, for joining in. But when we speak of the United States and oil tankers are also concerned, it seems that this is a second such interception of an Iranian tanker that has now been reported. And this fresh move to enforce its naval blockade, the Pentagon says that the US forces carried out what it called as a right of visit maritime interdiction of the vessel, which has been identified as MT Tiffany, without any incident. Now, according to the US officials, the ship was carrying Iranian crude and had previously been sanctioned for smuggling oil. And this is the second such incident that has been reported in recent days. So, Srinjoy, we are now looking up Washington stepping up the efforts to track and to stop any vessels that are said to be linked to Iran.
Yes, the Tiffany incident happened fairly recently, a couple of days ago. But what it's important to note is the fact that this blockade the Americans are serious about this blockade because they have the sufficient warships in the area to ensure that the blockade happens, and they have enough warships all around to be able to interdict one or two ships, Iranian ships, that have been sanctioned in the past. So at this point, the blockade continues two blockades continue, actually. So as a result, this is something that is going to hurt both sides. Both sides in the sense, all the countries that are transporting the oil to the countries that are buying them. And as I mentioned, India, China, Japan, South Korea, particularly, are going to be affected. Some oil to the Western countries can go through the Red Sea. They can go from a port on the Red Sea.
Yes.
If there are pipelines transporting the oil across the Arabian Peninsula to the Red Sea port, and then it goes straight up to the Suez Canal and then into the Mediterranean.
So it seems that as far as the US naval blockade is concerned, it is not just restricted to the area beyond, just after the Strait of Hormuz. It seems to be extending to other waters, international waters as well, when it comes to this interception, which is the second such interception that has taken place before the US announced the extension of the Iran ceasefire. But it has made it clear that the naval blockade would remain in place, and the decision on what to do with the ship, whether to tow it, to transfer, or to hold it, will be taken up in the coming days. So let's get you an understanding exactly when it comes to, through map, the Tuska, which was an Iranian cargo ship that had been seized on part of the United States Navy. Now, it had a very interesting route as well. It was coming from China, and it had also docked in Malaysia, and then it was en route Bandar Abbas, which is an Iranian port, to which the US military, in a way, search the containers and then thereafter dismantle it. This has now been said on part of the seizure that has been conducted on part of the US Navy. But when we talk about the US blockade that still tightens on Iran, we are looking at the second week of this blockade, and nearly 28 ships have now been turned back by the US Navy. So the Tuska seizure is something that has happened in the Gulf of Oman, and the US military says that it attempted to evade the blockade, and this operation that has been carried out when it comes to 5,000 of those containers that were checked, and the seizure that has happened, and the ship was disabled before the seizure by the US Navy. So the entire route that is also being mapped. So this is something when US Navy says that its blockade has been effective, that they are not allowing any entry or any exit of any ships that are said to be either bound for Iran or are leaving the Iranian ports. So Mayank, how effective and how wider has this naval blockade of the United States has become, and doesn't seem to be restricted just beyond the Strait of Hormuz?
Absolutely. And what you are saying can be construed in the form that they are searching for any vessel. I mean, these are all vessels actually, merchant vessels. Any vessel which is linked to Iran in one way or the other will be searched for. But two significant aspects which you brought out, and the informations which come out of Tiffany and Tusco, is that the past has been used to either board them or to block them. What it means is actually they had been part of some kind of a sanction for an activity which was termed illegal. Which goes back to 2020 and all. The past has been used to either seize them or to block them, or even in one case, missile has been fired and it has been disabled because their propulsion system was destroyed. So what you see is actually, let us again come back to that point. It can be construed that waterways, it can be international waterways, are being searched for. Any vessel which has a link, Iranian link, but in these two specific cases, the past has been used to either seize them, block them, or to make them immobile. So they have been, this is what the kind of trend as of now is showing. So all kind of ships which are linked to Iran and carrying out economic activities. Let me bring back the words which were used by our colleague Sanjoy, that it is a kind of economic warfare. Pushing Iran to a corner in such a way that they agree to most of the conditions of the US. This is the name of the game. So this is important tactics which is being used.
So not military at least, but this is economic warfare that US seems to be indulging in, choking financially as far as the Iranian economy is concerned, and this is what has been posted by President Trump, where he says that Iran almost on a daily basis has been losing $500 million, and this is something in the long run which is not sustainable. But speaking of the impact and the volatility that has now been witnessed across the markets, let's talk about that, because the crude oil prices once again, however, have been touching the $100 barrel per mark. And this is when it comes to the prices that have been hovering, they did see a fall, but again a rise, and this is despite a ceasefire extension that has been announced by President Trump. So there you can see in the stark differences when it comes to before the war started on the 27th of February, per dollar amounted to nearly 72.97, and then per barrel amounted to $72.97. And then when we take a look beyond a month, 22nd of April is what we are looking at. So almost 2 months within, as far as the war is concerned, we are looking at this volatility, 112, 99. In fact, it also touched $120 per barrel mark and now seems to be hovering around 98.3. So again, very close to the $100 per mark. That seems to be the volatility that has now been witnessed in Brent crude prices as well. Now, the oil markets are on the edge, but when we speak of mixed signals and mounting threats, the second round of US-Iran talks, however, remain in limbo. Now, adding to that uncertainty are comments coming in from President Trump, who says that Washington hopes to reach a great deal to end the war. Iran, however, seems to be holding its ground, refusing any truce under any shadow of threats. Vice President J.D. Vance's departure to Islamabad for now has been put on hold because there is no clarity whether Iran in the first place was agreeing for the second round of negotiation. So who exactly is calling the shots in Iran? Because there are diplomatic channels as well that is now led by Arakchi. Let's put out as far as the faces are now concerned, because this was a 70-member strong delegation previously had reached Islamabad for the first round of talks. But also remember that there is a very strong involvement of the IRGC as well. Now, IRGC seems to be making decisions which are starkly in contrast with the civilian leadership. Now that indicates of a possible rift or a divide in command. So as far as these phases are concerned, civilian and military seems to be involved. But again, there is this kind of a dilemma who actually is calling the shots, because despite the talks and de-escalation and negotiations taking place on one side, the IRGC has also been firing at ships and tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. So that exactly talks about a certain rift and a certain divide when it comes to who exactly is the leadership that President Trump seems to be talking about. Well, is that a conundrum? Srinjoy, that still remains, because President Trump still thinks that he has changed the regime. Well, that hasn't happened. Leadership has been replaced. But again, when it comes to the hardliners, they also still remain in that position.
There are enough hardliners calling the shots in Iran. They are running the show to a very large extent. So there is a change in leadership, but there is no regime change. Yes, the supreme leader was eliminated on that first day, but his son has taken over. Though he hasn't been seen often in public, he is the new supreme leader. Though there are others who have been eliminated, like Lariani and so on, there are enough hardliners, enough people in the Revolutionary Guard. In fact, some of the younger people who are now taking over are more likely to be hardliners, and they are more extreme in some cases than the people who have been eliminated. So that's a problem actually for the Americans and the Israelis. You have eliminated people who are older, wiser perhaps, or more understanding of the situation than people who are younger and less experienced and more likely to be doctrinaire.
Yes. Well, again, when it comes to the people who they seems to be holding the negotiations, because is there a reason that certain in the leadership are still left alive for that very particular reason, because they may have a softer or a more flexible stand when it comes to holding negotiations with the United States of America, because that also remains as a possibility, because there is still a very much involvement that is now coming on part of the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. But is the pressure also building now on Donald Trump? because that seems to be the situation, because at times when he was talking about, completely wiping out Iran off the map and bombing it back to Stone Age, then now some days he seems to be keen on ending the war. What is the possible measure? Is there no appetite for war left because he believes that he's doing it for world peace? Now, approval ratings are concerned. That seems to have taken a hit. And it is hurting President Trump's popularity. Even when it comes to his own MAGA base, they seems to be now no more convinced if actually Iran actually posed to be a direct threat to America, or did it come under the influence of Israel? Then when it comes to the gas prices, well, again, Americans would rise up and they will protest if $4 gas is something that every gallon that they have to pay, and if the prices go up. And on that very sentiment is Donald Trump treading very carefully, because the lawmaker seems to be uneasy with the war strategy that President Trump's, in a way, is trying to convince his people as to why this war was necessary. And it could also hurt when it comes to the Republican chances as well. So the midterms, whenever it takes place, because this is something that did not expect. President Trump, who thought that he could pull off a Venezuela and Iran, well, that was far from that, especially when it comes to Iran, which refused to bend and has rejected talks under pressure or ending under, shadow of threats. And the threats, however, have escalated because they are very much there. Because as far as the provocation is concerned, unprovoked countries in the Gulf region, and this is something where President Trump was also taken by surprise, that he did not expect that Iran would be hitting U.S. assets in Gulf. And not just that, when it comes to the countries there involving their residential and civilian infrastructure will also be hit by Iran. So this is something that seems to be bothering President Trump, and he, in a way, seems to be keen on ending this war, mediating via Pakistan, the messenger that is being played in this role by a terror state. Thank you very much, Mayank and Srinjoy, for joining us here on the broadcast. We just have to head into a very short break. The war updates will continue on the other side as well. Stay tuned.